Today's video is sponsored by Ground News, of whom more in a bit. Halloween is almost upon us, and I like to cover appropriately spooky subjects for the occasion. This year will be no exception, and I'll be covering what W.B. Herbert's book, Railway Ghosts, describes as the most haunted station on the London transport system, Covent Garden. Well, I don't know about that, but I think it's a strong contender for the most well-known ghost on the network. The story, as Herbert tells it, begins in the 1960s with station foreman Jack Hayden. It was midnight, on a night that fell during Christmas week. Mr. Hayden was working in his office when he was distracted by the rattle of a door handle. Turning to see who it was, Hayden was surprised to see a melancholy-looking gentleman in full Victorian evening dress. Hayden advised the man that he must be lost, but when he stood up to show the man the way out, his visitor simply vanished. Hayden assumed that he must have been overdoing it and told no one about his strange encounter until the following week, when a porter also saw the strange gentleman, apparently looking at Hayden and then disappearing. The porter was, so the story goes, so horrified that he resigned from London Transport over the incident. Now there are other versions of this story. In one from the Sunday Dispatch, the first sighting took place in November 1955. It was still late at night, and Hayden saw his strange-looking man apparently hanging around after the last train had gone, before heading to the exit. Hayden rang the booking office and asked the clerk to look out for a possible fare dodger, but the fare dodger never arrived. A few days later, the ghost was witnessed by another staff member, one Victor Locker. He gave a blood-chilling scream and came herring into the mess room, where he told Hayden that he'd seen a man who had pressed down upon his head and then vanished. In this version, it was Locker who would hand his notice in some time later. Hayden spoke to the station master and asked who he was going to call. Once again, we have two versions of events. Herbert has it that it was Psychic News who were called upon, who sent one of their experts. The Sunday Dispatch says that foreman Eric Davey of Leicester Square, himself a spiritualist, was the one who came to speak to the spook. Whoever it was, a séance was held in the mess room. Davey claimed to speak to the ghost, who claimed to be a murder victim. His name began with Ter. Hayden was shown photographs of possible candidates, and he instantly recognized his ghost. William Terrace. A certain amount of uncertainty is pretty much to be expected with ghost stories. But one place where I don't want it is in the news I consume. And that's why I'm glad to be partnering once again with Ground News. Ground News is a news aggregator that gives you a broader view of what's going on, by not only gathering the news together but showing you the different biases of each news outlet. For instance, let's take a look at this story about a warning by the IFS about the need to raise taxes. Well, obviously that's something that affects all of us, except the tax dodgers, I suppose. We can see from the summary that there's more coverage on the right than the left. 5 sources on the right compared to 4 on the left, and 4 in the centre. Let's compare what the different sides are saying. The Independent leans left and says that this could be the most consequential rise since at least 2010, which was when the Conservative Party were in power. But the right-leaning Times explicitly says that the tax rise must be twice as much as George Osborne's budget in 2010. It feels like they're both using the same comparison but in different ways to different effects. The Independent seems to be implying that things were worse under the Conservatives. The Times is implying that they were better, purely by choice of words. And this is why it's useful to get a broad view. Don't let yourself get tricked. Ground News also allows you to create your own custom feed, which I like because, being a transport journalist, influencer, content creator type person, I need to know what's actually going on as quickly as possible. For instance, if I say that I particularly want to see news about London, I can do that. Isn't that neat? In a world where it seems that everyone has an agenda, ground news is a great way of cutting through all that. If that sounds like something you'd be into, then follow the link below or use this QR code to get 40% off the Vantage subscription. That's the one I have, and that's the one that gives you access to all features. Anyway, all this talk about news bias is scary. Let's go back to talking about ghosts. So who was William Terrace? He was a Victorian actor. He's buried here in Brompton Cemetery, and somewhat curiously, he has two memorials. There's this one just off the central path, and this one by the east wall, where his mortal remains are actually interred. He's in good company. Many other show business people are buried here. Tom Foy, the comedian, William Pettit, the actor, Brandon Thomas, the playwright behind Charlie's Aunt, and Neville Maskelyne, the magician who also invented the pay toilet, as well as many other notable figures. William Terrace, born William Lewin, was a celebrity in his day, noted for his heroic roles on stage from 1868 to 1897. He was as able to take on Shakespearean tragedy as he was light comedy, and he gained the nickname of Breezy Bill for his charismatic style. Oddly enough, he seems to have resisted the call of the stage in his early years, trying out a number of other careers, even after finding success on the boards. From 1880, he was part of the legendary Henry Irving's company, where he was regarded as second only to Irving himself. In 1887, he was taken on by the Adelphi on the Strand in London's West End. This was only a short walk from Covent Garden. At the Adelphi, he would find even greater fame. He had a talent for melodrama, and if there's one thing the Victorians loved, it was a good melodrama. After returning to Irving's company and touring alongside Jessie Millwood, his frequent co-star and possibly romantic partner, he was engaged by the Adelphi again in 1894. Earlier in his career, he had made the acquaintance of a young actor named William Archer Prince. Prince was undeniably talented, and Terrace was more than happy to find him work with the company. But Prince also had a tendency towards emotional instability and a drinking problem. This worsened to the point where Terrace dismissed Prince following an argument. Terrace evidently felt somewhat guilty over the dismissal and tried to find Prince work. He even covertly sent him money. But Prince's deteriorating mental state and worsening addiction made him an erratic employee, and no one would have him. Prince didn't see it that way. As far as he was concerned, his downfall was Terrace's fault. And on the 16th of December, 1897, he got his revenge. He hid in a secluded alleyway outside the stage door of the Adelphi. Inside, Terrace gave another triumphant performance in the role of Captain Thorne in William Gillette's play Secret Service, without even the slightest inkling of what awaited him after the performance. When Terrace emerged from the stage door, Prince leapt upon him and dealt a fatal wound with a knife. The murder was a sensation, horrifying Victorian Britain. Prince was found guilty, but due to his severe mental illness, he was sent to Broadmoor Criminal Lunatic Asylum, rather than receiving the expected death penalty, much to the dismay of many commentators of the day. So, a beloved larger-than-life celebrity, a horrifying murder motivated by insanity, and a feeling in society at the time that justice had not been done. That sounds like the perfect recipe for a haunting. There's just one problem with this. Covent Garden Station did not exist in 1897. It didn't in fact open until December of 1906. Back then, Covent Garden was not the tourist hotspot it is today. It was the home of London's fruit and vegetable market, and was regarded as a bit of a rough area. That being said, it was also the home of St. Paul's, the Actors' Church, and the Royal Opera House, so it does have long-standing theatrical pedigree. I wonder if the actor's appearance in the station is a result of how the station was for much of its life. For a long time it was a very quiet station. Market traders didn't use it, nor did patrons of the opera, nor did local residents, to any great extent. It was frequently considered for closure. In fact, it wasn't until 1980, when the market was redeveloped, that the station had enough passengers to secure its future. Notably, though, most of the sightings come from before that, when the station must have been quite an eerie place to work late, especially on a dark and chilly night, when the mind can play tricks on one. That being said, there have been many sightings by many people. They did slow down a little after Jack Hayden was promoted and left the station, but they didn't stop completely. Apparently these days they are now considered a part of the job if you're assigned to Covent Garden. So I'm told. Terrace is also reported to appear at the Adelphi itself, which seems rather more appropriate. Nevertheless, we should perhaps not be surprised that an actor should want to be seen by the widest possible audience. Well, I do hope you enjoyed this spooky tale from the tube. If you did, please do leave a like and subscribe for more history which may or may not include ghosts. I would like as ever to thank my donors on Ko-fi, on Patreon, and here on YouTube for your support. You are the secret donation to my failed actor. I'd also like to thank Ground News once again for sponsoring this video. Check out the link in the description below to take advantage of their generous offer. And I will see you all again very soon. Cheerio, and happy Halloween.